Welcome, Drink with James, episode 153. I'm very happy to have our first return guest, Patrick, from A Guy Named Patrick, is here. I think the last episode we did was almost 2 years ago in your lovely apartment.
In my apartment.
I think it was like episode high 30s or something. Now we're at 150. I just said it, but I don't know what it is.
153.
153. And because Patrick is loved by all restaurateurs in the city, we're able to be in a essentially brand new restaurant,
Yeah,
La
they've been
Ventura
open for 2 weeks, I think.
on Hudson. I'm having a delicious cocktail here. Apparently the food is equally as good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Guys, the place is beautiful. I've never seen a pink marble bar before, but it exists in this space. So
Isn't it gorgeous?
it is fantastic. And I was just saying, like, having just built our office out and looked at Stone, I'm just like, okay, these guys spent some money on this bar top. So come through, if nothing else, than to take a flat lay on their bar top and drink one of their delicious cocktails. But appreciate y'all lending the space. I'm excited to do this because so much has changed since we sat down, and I think the caveat being, let's definitely put the link from your first episode, because we go through your kind of full biography, how you got into this space, the way you think about it, the way you shoot, which is pretty unique. And a lot of that hasn't changed, but a lot of it has changed quite a bit.
And I should say thank you for having me back on.
Of course.
I'm very honored to be your first repeat guest. So.
And cheers. And
Thank you.
I feel like this is the way we hang out now. Like, to be
Yeah,
able to,
exactly.
Like, you're so busy. To be able to hang out, we have to just be like, well, let's just film an episode.
Yeah,
and
let's
it's
make
just
it.
us.
Well, and
hanging.
it's nice, and I appreciate this about you, is that this setup is really us chatting.
Yeah.
It's not, there's like no pretense.
No.
It's not scripted, obviously. So it really, it's nice.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited to talk to you because, you know, every time we get together and I get a few drinks in me, I'm always like, oh, I respect you so much. You're amazing. You're so smart.
No, you say that even when you don't have a few
That's
drinks
true. But again, the space is changing so much, and I think for people like you who've been in it for a while, it's not changing in really great ways in a lot of ways, right? So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit about just how you feel like Instagram has changed, and then we'll talk about how you're kind of handling that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I have a lot of theories. So, one, I'd love to know
Are we gonna get,
if
like,
any of
conspiracy
my
theory?
No, I'm not. It's not like conspiracy theory. It's more about the fact that, like, ultimately nobody's really in control, as much as like Instagram might be trying to control their own platform. Users are doing their own thing, and that's constantly changing. It's such a big thing that, and part of the power of it and the beauty of it is that it really is sort of, the platform adapts to how people are using it, but that also means that there are a lot of ways in which actions and reactions happen that like nobody was anticipating or planned for. So it's less about conspiracy theories than like what is actually happening, what are the forces at play that are contributing to the things that I'm experiencing and that users are experiencing. I mean, number one, my engagement has gone down like, I mean, probably almost tenfold. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And this is maybe in like the last 2 years. And I know that this is something that you've talked about before, and I know that you've talked with other people about this before. One of the things that I think has happened for me is that I was really a kind of, essentially an early adopter.
Yeah.
I wasn't the first on the platform, but I was really one of the first to kind of have a following and then transact that into a kind of commercial enterprise and work with brands and really kind of capitalize on that, on the following that I had. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, and this is one of my theories, is that, you know, 2015 is really when like a bulk of my following really kind of showed up.
Yeah.
And so we are like 4 years later, 4 to 5 years later. There's been some growth since then, but that's really when like the majority of it happened. So whereas like, you know, you see the number next to my handle, a lot of those people may either use Instagram rarely,
Mm-hmm.
or they may not be on Instagram anymore. They may still have an account but never open the app, or they may be using it in a totally different way. They're like less excited, or even they're maybe just as excited, but they don't feel the need to sort of like double tap
Right.
or kind of seek out my content versus somebody else's content. And so in some ways, I think that like my specific audience has aged out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's, I haven't always done the best job in the last couple of years of like making sure that I'm kind of attracting a new audience. But then I think that there's also the kind of flip side of that, in which there's a lot of accounts, people who've been in the space for just a couple of years and who are really killing it, and people who saw individuals like myself and others as a sort of precedent for what they're doing and have really grown in the last couple of years, and their engagement is much
Mm-hmm.
better. They have a smaller following. I think that their audience is probably newer and younger, and I think that there probably is a value to some person on the platform who's not a content creator, who's looking to find inspiration, seeing somebody with a smaller following that feels a little bit more accessible, and maybe they're a little bit more apt to follow. So that's my excuse for saying I think it may be easier when you have a smaller following
No,
to,
yeah.
to attract new
And
followers.
And this is not, in no way is it unique. Not that you're not a unique flower, but we kind of class you the way I kind of talk about people like you that built a following early and were early adopters and kind of trailblazers for this industry is almost like a legacy influencer,
Mhm.
right? If that like across the board, you're like you and your contemporaries, same struggle. And it's that the following was built over so long that yes, some of them stop using the platform. And some of them it's like anything, if you're watching a show, season 6, you may still be super invested, but not maybe as rabidly as invested as you were like season 2, right? When you were like really getting into
Yeah, it feels maybe a little bit more like a utility. Like
Yeah.
it's there, you can kind of, dip in, dip out.
Yeah,
when
you don't want
to.
it out of your life, but it's not the thing you found a week ago that you're insanely excited about. And that's human nature, right? There's nothing you can do about that. And I think, one, no one else in your position would come on the show and be like, hi, my engagement's fallen like 10x. So like appreciate that, because I think this is just like, so many people are struggling with this stuff, and their reaction is to say, the algorithm is predatory. It's going against me specifically. It's not my fault. And they don't know what's going on. And so to be like, hey, this is just a thing that's happening, is hard, but like so mature, and I think the right way to approach it, because you still have a great career, you're still
Right.
working with
Well,
brands.
I'm fortunate that, to some level, I know that this has not been helpful in terms of business development and attracting clients, but it's also not been the number one thing that has been, the reason whether or not I'm getting business. And so I am fortunate that I still have really great relationships with clients. I'm still getting great work, and I'm very proud of the work that I do. You mentioned the algorithm question, that big thing, and I ultimately what I want to do is really try to take a look at like this whole environment, this whole ecosystem, and understand exactly what's going on. I don't love the algorithm, as I don't know that. Have you ever talked to anybody that's like, the algorithm is so great?
I like it.
You like it?
I like it because the platform wouldn't be possible. It just like, if it didn't have it.
You think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
because
I don't agree
like,
with that.
Imagine brands being like, cool, I'm going to post 8 times in a row. And because your feed is chronological, it's just going to show up all in a row.
Yeah, then you unfollow them. But then it gives the brand the opportunity to control the way that their content is being parsed out.
It is difficult. And look, I have 35 people working for me, and I'm totally reliant on a platform that I have no control over. It's terrifying.
Right.
So like, it is very frustrating, and I have my, I'm in a similar position of just like, I'm dependent on Instagram and I have no input into what they do. Or, they could change something and it can change my livelihood very quickly, just as it could change yours. I'm interested to know if you're having those conversations with clients, like, do you get ahead of it and say, hey, you might notice my engagement's a little low, here's what's happening, here's why. Here's, do you address it? Do you wait till they address it?
To be honest, I actually have not had that conversation at all with a client. It's not something I really like to point out. It's definitely something that I feel like if anybody's doing their due diligence, they'll be looking at my feed and kind of understand like what the numbers are looking like. I'm happy to have the conversation, but what I'm more interested in is talking about the value of my audience, whether or not they're like really proactively engaging, and also the value of this sort of like landscape that I'm showcasing, just in terms of the other brands that I'm working with, this sort of like holistic view of my work as a creative professional and as a sort of authority in the lifestyle space. That to me is a much more interesting conversation, and where I would rather focus the conversation. And this is what I was doing before.
Yeah.
Like it was ever even a question about numbers, because it's really about the quality of my following. There's still like a very valuable cross section of people and specific individuals that I can like point to who follow me, and ultimately the content that I'm showing, I think, is consistently sort of for those clients that I'm most interested in, is very well positioned for their brand. But this is actually the thing that, back to this sort of algorithm question, this is the thing that I think is the most major drawback for me personally, and the way that I like to create and the way that I like to work. I don't think that the algorithm rewards, I was going to say creativity. We'll use creativity as a term of like sort of like expansive thinking about how you want to, like what you want to put out there, because ultimately the algorithm is saying, did people like this? Then we're going to show it to a lot more people, and then as a creator I'm going to see that a lot of people liked it, and I'm incentivized to continue creating that same thing. So I mean, any of us know like the one thing that we might be able to show that's going to continue, like getting
your
the
face,
engagement,
smiling,
yeah, exactly. Which, funny enough, it's not my face. People don't necessarily like me. If it's like me in a beautiful environment, then like maybe
it does well.
Yeah, like a beautiful like interior or something.
And I'll say, for people who maybe aren't familiar with Patrick, it's not that your engagement is necessarily bad. It's just that it used to be exceptional, and now it's not as good. It's not like you have this terrible engagement, or anything.
Right.
So I just want to like preface that.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's ultimately this thing. To be honest, it's not even about the engagement. It's just I can look in my analytics and I can see the reach. I can see the number of people that saw it, and that's just like depressing to me. Where I'm like, why is it that one thing was shown to 100,000 people and something else was shown to like 15,000 people, and it's like really that wide of a disparity. But ultimately, what I've decided is that regardless of what the algorithm is going to do or teach me and how I should, and the types of content that I'm going to put out there, I'm just going to continue putting out a wide variety of content. I'm still going to show every once in a while a coffee. I'm going to show food on the table. I'm going to show an interior. I'm going to show me somewhere. I'm going to show a New York City landscape. And I don't really think that type of content creation is rewarded, because it's not, it's the algorithm ultimately is narrowing the sort of like point of focus, as opposed to allowing for a more kind of a wider breadth.
I agree.
And that's the thing that is ultimately the most frustrating.
And it's depressing for me. I mean, I miss the platform that used to reward creativity, used to reward people who, at some point, Instagram switched from look what I created to look at me.
Yeah.
And I think that shift will never go back. I mean, I think I'm 95% sure they're going to get rid of likes publicly in the next month or so.
I love that idea.
That seems like something I like that idea too, because it's just like you can be like, oh, I can just go back to publishing whatever I want and not feel like, oh, this photo didn't do well.
Yeah, there is that anxiety, and even I don't know if anybody would think that somebody in my position, where I do have a lot of great opportunities, I'm still getting my full-time job is Instagram. I still have that anxiety of oh, people aren't liking it, people aren't paying attention. Did somebody see the number of likes? Should I delete it? Should I be embarrassed? All of these things. And ultimately, that's just like, none of those things was I ever thinking about when I first started, this work. So I like the idea of reducing the anxiety.
And how do you deal with that? I mean, over the last few years, have you given into the temptation to try and hack the algorithm and just publish stuff that you think people are going to really like? Or have you been able to say, you know what, this is still my space, this is my corner of the internet, and I get to decorate it the way I want?
I mean, really the latter, because I ultimately, just the way that I function as a human being, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And it's not always to like my benefit, but I'm much more invested in creating the things that I want to create, taking the like mantle of inspiration and creativity that I've been given and expressing that how I want. And that to me is ultimately more important. It's not necessarily a great business decision, to be honest. A good business decision is like reading the numbers and reacting to that, but that's just not the way that I work.
Yeah. And so speaking of kind of, thinking through those things, like you're always someone that's dabbling in other stuff, right? Whether it's not dabbling and starting a whole new business, which you have a few still, or something like YouTube, which you're investing in now. Are you personally like, I guess I'll say like, let's start with YouTube. Like, why start a YouTube?
Right. Well, I think all of the things that we've been talking about, what control do I have? What's the landscape of this space that I'm working in, specifically on Instagram? That's like one big question mark. The other big question mark is like, where is this all heading? What do I want for my future? What do I want this all to shape up into? And sort of like at the middle of that, I think that I think the answer is I have a really valuable audience and opportunity because of the audience that I have. I don't have full control, and I want to take this somewhere else. So how can I leverage what I've already created and continue to build something one step at a time? And really, to me, the answer that I've come up with is really diversifying my audience. And that's what, for me, YouTube is all about. Well, it's twofold. It's diversifying my audience. I've also had a very long interest in being on camera, whether it's from when I was younger, from an acting perspective, what I've been kind of working on a lot now as a sort of host, and I have a few like ideas for a program that I'm trying to develop, also more for I don't know, other bigger channels.
Yep.
So YouTube for me was a way to just like figure that out.
Yeah.
It was a way to practice. It was a way to be on camera. It was a way to develop a new audience. Obviously, leverage the audience I already have, but try to harness a new audience on this other platform and really understand what that's all about. But also, what I found since I just launched my YouTube channel like less than a month ago, I have 2 videos out. Thank you. And I'm keeping it fairly slow right now. It's like 1 video every 2 weeks. And I decided that I wanted to focus less on the kind of vlogger style and sort of, me kind of in my environment, just talking to the camera, and more about interacting with other people, very similar to what you're doing. But more in like the space of these individuals and people that aren't necessarily connected to Instagram, but creatives in general. I have found that I'm in a moment where I'm like really inspired and excited by this new creative project that I've taken on.
That's gotta be fun.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
Because it's been a while, to be honest. Like years of posting every day and making sure that I'm excited about the image that I'm posting and that I really feel like the questions we've just been talking about, people are going to be excited by the things I'm posting. All of a sudden, the stakes are totally different again. I'm just doing something because I love it.
You're an underdog again.
Yeah.
You're like a newbie.
Like how do I do this and make it something that I love, that people are going to notice, that I'm excited about, and that is really sort of like fulfilling that creative passion in me. That's really what I found. And I didn't really go into the YouTube space thinking that that's what it was going to be. The reason, the specific reason that I started this YouTube channel now is kind of a funny story because the first video I shot with Bobby Flay. We made burgers in his kitchen at the restaurant Gato.
Casual.
Casual, right? So the funny thing was, I know the PR team from the restaurant. I've worked with them on a number of different things, and they were saying that there was a new brunch menu. They were looking to highlight that. They'd love to work with me, and normally that would be me going in, having brunch, documenting it, posting it on Instagram. But they also said, we have Bobby. You can do something with Bobby.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you got Bobby. All right, well, let's do something with Bobby. Let's start a YouTube channel. So it was something that had been kind of percolating for a while.
Like that kind of just
it was
pushed
sort
it
of
over
yeah.
the edge. Yeah.
Exactly. It was like, what does this mean to me? What does it need to look like? And for a long time, I just didn't do anything because I didn't know what my angle was. And then as soon as I had access to somebody who I thought was, from a totally different arena, somebody that I respected, somebody in a space that I really love, in the food space, and it just kind of like all coalesced and made sense. And I was like, let's do a video and let's put it on YouTube. And I'm going to start a YouTube channel.
So I'm interested because I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, having the following you have, the stakes are higher, right? Everything you do,
Sure.
A lot of people see it. Annoyingly, sometimes more than others, but I think that device that stops you from trying something new, that like, it needs to be right, it needs to be well thought out, right? Is sometimes good and sometimes really, really bad.
I agree.
And so I think there's probably a lot of people watching this that think about wanting to do a podcast or start a YouTube channel or anything, start a new blog or whatever, but they're feeling like, I guess my question is like, one, speaking to that, like, now that you're just even 2 in, do you feel a weight lifted off that you're just doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, do you think it's possible for someone with a following to play out the creative process of figuring that shit out, right? Or do you feel still, being a person who is put together and everything you do has a level of finish to it, that you can't show that process and be like, I don't totally know what this channel is going to be, but here we go?
Yeah, I really think that you can be very vulnerable in that way. I think that's kind of what you're asking, right? I think that I'm fortunate that because I've been in this space for long enough that I've kind of developed a team and a framework and a workflow for how I get things done. So I have somebody that works for me full time, and he's my project manager, Mauricio. He's great. And he is able to come help me put like anything from renting some sound equipment to being there on the shoot to manage that sound equipment. I have a photographer that I work with sort of on a retainer basis, Sam Ortiz. He's amazing. And he shoots when I specifically need a photographer, and so I could tap him. He also does video. So all of that to say, I have a framework that I can, an infrastructure that I can utilize, but there's so much about it that I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work or what we're going to do, or let's just like try to figure it out. I feel very strongly about the way that I create, and I think actually all of these sort of like doubts and insecurities aside, the thing that I feel most strongly about in my own like personal brand and ability to create is that I do have I have a sense of sort of like aesthetic and style that I know when something's going to like meet that bar, and I'm not willing to just like throw shit out there. However, there does need to be a good balance. Like you said, I also realize that nothing's going to be perfect, and I'm constantly like questioning and doubting and being like frustrated because something isn't exactly the way that I wanted to, but also being okay that like, just putting something out there is a really big feat, and that's really important. So I mean, it's just a mix of both. It's like work really hard to make sure that you're doing the best that you possibly can and use the resources that you have to make that happen, but also just know that like whatever you're going to put out there is not going to be something that you're either always proud of, or that at least that it is like not perfect. But the funny thing is I've been editing the videos with my photographer Sam, and I've loved it.
Really?
I've been like in Premiere. I've been like slicing things up. I've been watching I've been staying up till like 2 a.m. watching tutorials on like motion graphics, and
Right.
I love that stuff.
Right.
And this is part of what I'm talking
Which
about
I
too.
think it's important to be like, you can definitely afford to have someone do that for you, right? But like, interesting that you're like, oh, I want to learn this new medium.
Well, it's also like, yes, I could afford it, but I don't know if I could afford like 30 back and forths
Right.
to like get it to the point where I want. And I think there's a lot of us in this space who are like, part of the reason we love being on social media is we really can have control,
Yeah.
and it's fairly easy to like have control, get the images we want, and kind of put them out there. And with this specifically, if I weren't in there like editing down this like hour-long tape into like a 10-minute cut, at least from just to like get the backbone of the thing right, it would be
beast.
a total beast.
Yeah.
So it actually is. While I have a lot of other things I need to be doing, it still makes the most sense
Yeah.
for me to kind of be in there doing it.
And you know, I've been talking a lot recently about craft and how like something I see lacking in the influencer space is this, that in almost every other job isn't lacking, right? We're in this beautiful restaurant, and the owners, I'm sure, are constantly thinking about how can I make better food, how can I make better drinks, how can I create better experiences, and they are investing in that process, because at the end of the day, that is how you continue to stay relevant and interesting. But for a lot of influencers, once they get their following, that craft side of it isn't there. They're not thinking about, can I, you know, learn how to shoot better? Should I be, you know, investing more in like, if people are into food, should I be learning more about like food and cooking and trying to bring that, you know, experience to my audience? And the simple thing of you being like, I need to learn how to edit this video, I think is an example of what we probably need more of in this space of just like, these are skills you'll have for the rest of your life.
Yeah, totally.
And
well, that's an interesting thing that you just said, because I think that I'm guilty of that too. At a certain point, you know, this is a new skill that I'm learning because of a new medium, but I don't know that I always have been invested in making sure that, you know, like once I have a really great foundation and work, that I'm continuing to sort of like improve that sort of like ecosystem of work. So yeah, it is really important.
But I also like, you said something earlier, you were talking about how maybe, you know, you're feeling really reinvigorated and re-inspired. Do you think now, looking, you know, once you have this new thing in your life, right, that's exciting and fun, and maybe you're a little more re-engaged, do you think that like any of the, you know, slip or whatever we might see in your Instagram over the last couple of years is that you, as someone who is hyper creative and always wants to be doing more, are getting bored doing it?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of it, for sure. And I think that's maybe why there hasn't been the new audiences that I've been bringing in, because maybe I haven't been invested in making sure that, or not even invested in making sure anything, just like, yeah, maybe a little bit bored or a little bit sort of like wanting a new challenge, and it's the challenge that's not there that has not allowed me to like really push forward.
Do you find now having the YouTube, and I know it's so new,
Yeah,
but
brand
maybe
new.
we'll talk in a year again, or 2 years, and you'll be already sick of YouTube. You'll be like, oh, I have this big
I don't
YouTube
think so.
following. YouTube's
Yeah,
screwing
who
me
knows?
over
Who knows?
now.
I
And I'm
mean,
on TikTok.
I will say, oh God, TikTok. I
It's the
downloaded it,
Yep.
and then I watched a bunch of videos, and I'm like, shit.
We're too old for
How
it.
do I even?
That's one we just gotta let it go.
God. Yeah, I'm certainly not.
I can't wait for
19
the
anymore.
Guy Named Patrick meme account on TikTok, where you're
Ah.
just doing like dance memes.
The funny thing is, I can be a stupid dancer, like
Yeah.
silly. So there's probably some like ridiculous memes to
I'm
be
sure.
made out of me, but I don't know that it would be
I
flattering.
appreciate that you don't film yourself dancing. If I could have a request for the influencer community, if
Wait,
you could fucking stop filming yourself dancing, that would be great for me.
like in dancing, like
Oh, it's just like
Like,
such a thing. Like, you know, now like all
I did
these
just put it, I
influencers.
did put up a story of myself hula hooping yesterday.
Hula hooping is not dancing. That is
Okay.
a sport. Okay,
I don't know
that's
if it's a sport, but
for some people. For the
It is
person
for
who's
some people,
the
you're
best hula hooper in the world,
It
they
is a
are like,
sport,
I'm
you're
an
right.
athlete.
Yeah.
Probably their core strength is probably incredible.
Mhm.
There's a benefit of YouTube, hopefully driving followers into your Instagram because
Mhm.
I know I talked to Marcel.
Really, I mean, it's really about creating that
Yeah,
whole ecosystem.
right.
It's like the following on YouTube drives back to Instagram,
vice
and
versa.
we know that like a YouTube following is like super strong
Very
and sort of
engaged.
very engaged. But it's also, you know, I also just recently started a new series of live events called The Gathering, which I just put up a new website for it last week. And this is my goal, to have events that are large, small, in between. It's anything from a wine tasting to a pool party to a breakfast tasting with coffee pairings, which I did yesterday. The goal is for me to interact with people, with my audience in an IRL way, which I sort of did a little bit with Spring Street Social Society, but it was like I felt like that was pretty far removed from
Yeah.
like me
That was-
and my like social
yeah.
space. So ultimately what I'm trying to do is find audiences in the places where they want to be, and hopefully create this whole ecosystem. I think even since we last talked, I started a newsletter.
Yep.
I mean, I just hit a year of like a newsletter every week, which was like
a
very, I was very proud of myself
Yeah.
because it's been a lot of work for
Yeah.
me. But yeah, like
Has it been
ultimately,
valuable?
yeah, it's been super
Yeah.
valuable. And I think that but again, it's hard because I'm ultimately growing a new audience just on this
Right. Yeah.
this one platform.
And like
And-
coding.
What's that?
And like coding emails.
yeah, I'm pretty good at it. So.
I guess like, you know, in thinking about like takeaways for this video, it feels like for you also just that new challenge and being re-engaged and being re-inspired to like win again and to figure it out and to be good at this thing. Does that bleed into everything else you're doing in your life, Instagram and otherwise, like your relationships, all of that? Like I am someone who needs to be passionate about something or I get like really depressed, right? And so if you're not feeling that like, I want to jump out of bed and like I have so much to do today and I'm so excited to do it, I get really sad.
Yeah, I think the way that I frame it is like I've looked back and now I'm 37, you know, not a youngin. I look back and I'm like, I literally for the past like 20 years of my life have only done the things that I was excited about, that I was doing on my own terms. And that has definitely not been easy. There have been most of my 20s was wonderful. I was traveling and like living in different places and totally penniless, you know, it was kind of crazy. But I think about it in terms of like, I actually don't know how I've survived making my world based off of just the things that I want to do. And I know that a lot of people would love to sort of like leave their regular job to, you know, go out on their own. And a lot of people have, like that's been a wonderful thing about social media. I just literally do not have an option as a human being to do anything other than the thing that I'm passionate about, the thing that I want to do. And you know, who knows where that will take me? I have no idea. I don't know that that's like advice that I would give to anybody. It's just like that's just how I
think you're
am.
lucky that, you know, the thing you're passionate about is also the thing you're good at. So I think for some people that's not the case. You could be
That's
really
true.
passionate about cooking and be shit at it.
Yeah.
And the advice probably wouldn't be, you should just cook.
But I'm also not the best at it. I don't think that anything that I do, this is the same as me as a graphic designer. That's what I studied in school and did for a long time. I'm not the best graphic designer. I'm not the best creative director. I'm not the best like on-camera host. I'm not the best Instagrammer. I'm not the best business person. But any of these things, I'm just gonna keep fucking figuring it out and keep like pushing myself and holding myself to a high standard. And that is really the only way that I think it's gonna work.
Yeah. Do you think about, do you think about the exit? Do you think about, the future of this and your career could be 30 more years, like what you're gonna do? yeah, like how, like, or are you just like living, being present, and trying to enjoy life?
It's mostly the latter. I do think I have a vision for myself, which is really sort of continuing to build this ecosystem that I'm talking about, and each sort of pillar of that into like bigger and bigger and stronger like pillars and a platform and audiences, so that at a certain point, you know, having a name, not to flatter myself, somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow or like
Right.
a Martha Stewart, you know, somebody who has a name in which there are multiple kind of entities in which people sort of, which the public interact from entertainment to product, to other media, digital media, like that is, I think, the most sort of like direct path for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm interested in figuring out television, figuring out product. I have my app, the Liquor Cabinet. We're about to launch an e-commerce. You can buy liquor through the app. Like various things in which I'm sort of like slowly building upon those foundational blocks that I've set. But I'm not one to create like a vision board
Yeah.
and follow it.
And I think that, like, you know, you saying, oh, I'm not the best in the world at any of these things, you know, for most people probably true. I think, yeah, what's unique about you is you're like this snowball rolling down a hill that keeps collecting more things. And while you may not be best in the world at any one of them, not many people in the world do as much shit as you do. Like, I mean, you have so many slashes in the stuff that you do that I think it allows you to kind of bend and flex with where the industry is going and what they need.
Right. Well, and that also is part of the fun for me.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, I think that's where I derive the most joy and excitement, because ultimately, one thing, it's less sort of like one thing not working out than like my attention being caught by another thing and being like, oh, I love that idea. How can we build on that? What can we do with that? Let's like really, Mauricio, who works with me full time, I literally walk into the office every day and I'm like, okay, so I had an idea.
And it's like, no more ideas.
No, but I think he kind of loves it.
Yeah.
Do you love it, Mauricio? The other day I came into the office, I'm like, let's start a new Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And it was like for agnp.co, like my website. In a way, I just started working with my friend Morgan. She's based on the West Coast, and she's contributing to my newsletter and helping with the website as a sort of like editorial entity. And I'm like, well, why? I literally have not told anybody this before. So
here we go.
And Mauricio probably doesn't even know this. Or Morgan definitely doesn't. So I'm like, why, if she's like going to these like restaurant openings in Los Angeles because we might be interested in talking about them on the newsletter, but like where I want another place for this stuff to go. So maybe we need an Instagram account where it's not things, my Instagram account is just me and the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a place where like all of the various activities and the types of things, the types of coverage that I like to do can have a space to live in like a social platform.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of stupid because like, do I have time to like run another Instagram feed? No.
Probably not.
No, definitely not. But you know, that was a great idea that I had, and we have a summer intern, so.
Congratulations, intern. You now run an Instagram account.
No, she doesn't know that either, so.
Real quick, and maybe you haven't had any, but I wanted to talk a little bit about failure because it is something that isn't discussed much in the Instagram world, right? And again, there is this, I think there's something I've noticed as the company's grown, is you start to feel like kind of anything you do is going to work, because like the thing you did first worked really well, and so you start to be like, oh, I'm pretty good, like I can just launch shit and it'll work. And you know, we've had a lot of failures that were surprising to me. I'm wondering if you do more as an influencer and try more new things than I think anyone else that I know of. Do they all work as well as you thought they would?
No, definitely not.
And kind of what have you learned from some of those, failures, quote unquote,
Yeah, I mean, there anything from like, am I working with a brand and their goal is to like sell a product, and like that's just like the way that my visibility and brand works. I'm not probably going to sell a product. I think of myself as like helping to create brand visibility. So I've like dabbled in that a little bit, and the times when it hasn't worked out as much as I wanted to, I've learned from that. Sometimes even recently when I've started this new series of in-person get-togethers, The Gathering, I know that there are a lot of people who potentially are interested in physically being at a thing that I'm creating, but you know, for whatever reason, there might be an event that like just like very few people RSVP'd for. Mm-hmm. There's always things where I'm surprised by what I thought was going to happen just didn't happen to like the extent that I was hoping for. Really the lesson in all of this is that it's all still going to be a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And even if I were at a place where I could just like sell something out like that, ultimately there's going to be something else where you just have to continue working, and like I would still have to continue growing my audience, still have to continue making sure that I'm, you know, being creative in how I'm reaching people, and keeping that going. But really, it's mostly come down to the fact that it's just work. Like if there are events that I'm hosting, continuing to think about like how can I make these really wonderful, creative, interesting things that people are going to be attracted to, or making sure that I'm doing personal reach out, sending emails or sending text messages to people that I really want to be at these events, to continue to sort of like grow traction for it. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people that I have conversations with, just like out and about, I'll run into somebody at an event or something, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're just like you're so busy. You're doing so many things. I see you everywhere." And you know, that's like very validating, but it's not necessarily the way that I see myself. Mm-hmm. I see myself as like kind of everything that we've just talked about, like really just like throwing stuff out there and trying new things and like figuring it out. And there are things that are like super successful, and there are things that that have like worked really well. But then there are also these things that I'm like, well, yeah, you see me out there, but you also don't know that like kind of behind the scenes, it's like a real struggle to make sure that it's like executed or reaching the level that I was like hoping for and expecting. And I think that just the reason that people actually say that and think that is because I am just so like ambitious and ready to like put things out there. But it's less because I'm like lucky and things are coming to me, or because, you know, I'm just like having so many great opportunities. Mm-hmm. It's really making sure that whatever opportunities come my way, that I'm thinking very creatively about, and making sure that you know, if a brand or a potential, you know, press opportunity or something comes my way, that I'm thinking about it in a way that like is exciting to me to interact with, and therefore the thing that I'm showing to the world, you know, is going to be something that people react to and are like, oh, that was amazing. I see that you're doing all these wonderful things, but you know, little do you know that like it took me quite a bit of work to like make that the case. Yeah,
you know, I think something that I have realized from the last 7 years of running this company, and I'm sure that the restaurant owner to our right could agree with, and I think you would, is that I have been surprised constantly how hard it is to be successful. I'm still trying to get there. I think when I was younger, I definitely felt like just like being smart and having a capacity for work would like get you there, you know, and it's been a slog.
Can I ask you, I mean, I don't know how often you talk about like the office environment and like your world. I mean, you have how many employees?
Like
40?
36 or something.
Like 35, 40 employees, and you have a new office.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely, you know, from an outsider's view, I'm looking at that, and that's like successful. Does it feel successful to you?
Yes and no, right? Like you can step back sometimes and be like, oh, that's nice. That's great. I think that like usually when you get something, you've wanted it for so long that it is hard to appreciate it, you know, because it's like finally, God, I've been like killing
Right.
myself, you know. I am anxious to like have a change in my life where I feel satisfied. I don't think I'm a little worried that maybe that will never come.
What do you
that-
think is what do you need? What could you see happening right now to make that a reality?
Actually, you know, it's like I don't even know. You know, we are still like in such a growth mode, and we're pushing the like absolute limit of what is possible. That every month, it's like, you know, we could make no money for months and still be okay, but it's really, really, it's still just unbelievably stressful and difficult, you know. I've always, you know, I was raised, my dad always like said, like, called us like, you know, future leaders of America. I was always kind of raised thinking like that the expectation was like really, really high. And I think I'm just waiting to like have something that feels like, okay, like you're like decent at this. You know what you're doing.
You don't feel like that has come.
No, not at all. I also personally have like no money still. Like we're in
Right.
such a like we're still like every, you know, I think I'm like the 8th or 9th highest paid employee in the company. So I've lived in the same apartment for 11 years. You know, so my life is actually not much different than it was when I started the company. So I don't feel like the company is successful. I am not successful yet.
Yeah.
Like in that my life is not really much different.
How do you? So at what point do you? Because basically what that means is you have this whole. You have, as your opportunities have grown, your costs have grown. You've had to hire new staff. You need a larger office, so your like overhead has grown.
Yeah.
But you're continuing to like bring in bigger clients, bring in bigger jobs. So, like the revenue and overhead have sort of
Yeah.
continued to match.
Yeah.
So what is it that needs to happen in order to like, I don't know, like
yeah.
break away from that?
I
Because
think for me-
then that would also shift the way that you're
Yeah.
able to kind of capitalize on the business
Yeah.
that you built, right?
I think yes. I think for me, I just want to see how far I can take it.
Okay.
You know, like I want to do 100 million a year in revenue. I want 1,000 employees. Like I want to see how big can I make this thing. Because I feel like for me, like I was lucky enough to jump into this industry at the very, very beginning. And this industry is changing advertising, and we are, I think, increasingly seen as a leader in this space that is growing really quickly. And that chance will probably never come again in my life. Much like for most influencers, you know, you jumped on this thing early. The next platform that started, you probably, even if you jumped in early, probably wouldn't connect because it would be
Right.
more for young people, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
this was your shot
Right.
to like do something to dramatically change your life, which it has, right? And so like this is my shot to build a huge organization and see just like how far am I capable of taking it? Is the team that I've been able to attract capable of taking this thing? And yeah, can we be a public company? Can we be $1 billion company? Can we, you know, can we put ad agencies out of business and kind of change the face of that? Like maybe. I'd like to see if it's possible.
And do you feel like you have a lot of sacrifices to make during that journey?
Yeah. Yes.
Like personally.
Yeah, and we were talking a bit about you know, like staying in New York and like not traveling and passing things up to stay home and like do the work. And that for me is the goal. It's just like I just want to put the work in and see how far it goes. I'm not super anxious to be like, you know, spending a month in Italy and just traveling around living that lifestyle. It's not really interesting to me. I want to go into the office every day. I want to push the people that are there. I want to be pushed by them. I want to solve like impossible problems. You know, we missed our numbers last month by $600,000. So we're trying to make 600 grand. First time we've missed our numbers in 11 months. And it's okay. Like,
Stressful?
yeah. Now on the path to making that up, this month, and this month we could make more money than the company made the first 4 years combined, I think, or
Okay.
3.5 years. But like that like up and down is relentless.
Yeah.
And
that's
it's-
stressful.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. And but like getting out of it, like everyone in the company now is better than they were a month ago because we failed.
Mm-hmm.
And because we all looked at ourselves and were like, well, that can't happen again. Literally, that can't happen like another 3 times because
Right.
like people will
Because-
start losing their jobs.
Yeah.
But also like we are all striving for excellence, and like we fell short. And so like, what are we gonna do to make sure that doesn't happen again? And so it's a totally different company than it was 3 weeks ago. And like
Wow.
that's, to your point, like growth is the most exciting thing in the world. Personal growth, professional growth, whatever it is. And to grow, you need to be challenged. And I think that like, that's why I've always, I feel like I had such a connection with you because you're always throwing yourself into shit that you don't really know how it's gonna end.
Mm-hmm.
And those challenges, and whether they end in a win or a loss, turn you into a little better person.
Yeah,
Better
definitely.
at your
Well,
job.
you're always learning,
Yeah.
ultimately, and I think that's the thing that is maybe not always part of this sort of like growth of a lot of the people that are in this space. Is like there tends to be a pretty direct route from like putting yourself out there on social media, working really hard, being in it constantly for sure, but then like having an audience and being able to capitalize on it. But I think that there's a little bit of that sort of like having to fail and having to figure it out and having to throw yourself in there, and a little bit of that real kind of like traditional, kind of like up from your bootstraps,
Yeah.
having to like figure it out constantly.
I mean, that's like, I think I talk about craft now because when you see people who are successful, it's generally because it's like they worked on this thing for like 20 years. And they just, they just were so maniacally focused on that thing that they got so good at it in the shadows when nobody was watching,
Right.
that eventually it changed their lives and the lives of the people around them and potentially the world. And
Can you imagine like any of the people, like nobody in this space right now has been working more than like a couple of years, myself included, like 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
Like most of the people are 20 years old. Like
Right.
nobody has put that much time into this thing.
But you've been telling stories for 15 years in your career,
Yeah.
right? Like, yes, the medium
sure.
is different, but like how much of the reason you're successful is because you were at Bon Appetit and you worked for those editors it was Bon Appetit, right?
Yeah.
You worked for those editors that pushed you and told you, that's shit, that's not how you talk about this, this is how you do things. Like, all of that hard work that went into it. While it may take you a minute to compose, shoot, and publish an Instagram post, and maybe you make a lot of money on that, it actually was the 15 years of work you've put in.
For sure, and it's really where I feel my strongest value comes from, is really the life that I've lived outside of social media. The only way that I'm actually able to create compelling content, worthwhile content, things that people are interested in, have a perspective and a point of view about the things that I'm documenting, are because of the life that I've lived, during and pre and around the world that I'm showcasing on social media.
Well, somehow, you crafty man, you flipped this around and started interviewing me at the end. But I think that's a good place to call it. I mean, I hope everyone watches this and starts something new. I think that that is something I always feel leaving a conversation with you, and something I hope people watching just start something.
Yeah.
Right? Just try something new.
Yeah, and I think that I've become more and more aware and open to just the idea of us all in this industry being really supportive, because I've gone through so many ups and downs. I've seen when other people have supported me. I realized the power that it provides when I'm supportive of other people, of like whatever place that we're in, and hopefully the things, and that's actually one thing that I really love about this series that you have, is it really is supportive to all of us in the industry. And I really think that that's a valuable thing for all of us to consider in our own sort of small individual relationships with people, so that we can continue to be, like uplifted and upheld while we're just throwing shit out there and trying to make it work.
Well, maybe the next time we do this, you'll have your own Netflix show, and I'll be on it. And
I hope so. That would be great.
We'll do it there.
Let's definitely do that.
But if y'all don't, if you don't subscribe to his YouTube, please do. Tim will put a link up. He'll also put a link to the first video. We talked about almost none of the same things. It was a completely different conversation. So don't think that if you watch this, you don't have to watch the other one. If you got here to the end, you will definitely enjoy hearing about the beginning of your career and how you ended up doing this. Always great to sit and drink with you.
I know, right? And we did drink.
And we did drink. And thank you again to L'Avventura on Hudson here in the West Village. This place is beautiful.
Yeah.
The drinks are amazing, and the guys who run it are pretty great too. So make sure you swing by and show your appreciation with your credit cards.
Yeah.
That is all.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.